This edition of Sports Scrapbook takes us to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're about to witness the largest collection of sports memorabilia in the world. Over 1 million items from some of the world's most renowned athletes, all under the care of one Joel Platt. He's quite a guy, and this is quite a story. And if you're a sports memorabilia nut like me, what you're about to see is going to blow your mind. The term immortal applies to those whose fame defies death. In sports, it is the athletic hero who lives eternally in the minds and hearts of fans, both young and old. Jim Thorpe, the son of triumph and tragedy, is one of those immortals. And so too is Muhammad Ali, whose boxing prowess and charisma moved him into hallowed territory previously held by others, like Jack Dempsey and the famed Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. Ben Hogan is an immortal, as is that fireballing right-hander of American folklore, Leroy Robert Page, Satchel to us tracers of legend. The immortal of immortals in American history would have to be George Herman Ruth, the Babe, whose fame continues to grow with each new generation. For most of us, our immortals can only be found amid the pages of books, or perhaps, if we're lucky, in some rare footage of film. But for one man, a Pittsburgh real estate developer named Joel Platt, his passion for sports immortality comes as close to the real thing as one can get. He's perhaps the world's foremost collector of sports memorabilia, most all of it stored in the basement of his suburban home. It's one man's answer to the catacombs, and the relics found here are the stuff of which museums are made, which is precisely Joel Platt's goal, a Smithsonian of sport. It's a mind-boggling idea, considering we're talking about a one-man effort here, but it could happen. A bizarre and near-fatal boyhood accident actually served as the beginning of the Platt passion.
Well, Jim, it all began when I was 4 years old. At the time, I put a match in the gas tank of a car and it exploded. For 2 years, I was bedridden. My parents started buying me baseball cards to entertain me during this time. They had a bell above my bed, and it was really a trying period in my life. The baseball cards was something that I was enthusiastically involved with. And from the baseball cards, it evolved into autographs, programs, actual mementos from all the great athletes. While growing up, I had hoped to be a Major League Baseball player myself, played shortstop at Duquesne University, but subsequently injured my arm, ruined my baseball career. But I never lost sight of my dream while I was growing up, and that was to create an international all-sports museum.
Long after Babe Ruth had captivated the hearts of America's sports fans, a young Joel Platt was busy trying to captivate the heart of the Babe's widow in search of treasure.
Now this, I'm told, Joel, is the largest existing autograph of Babe Ruth, and we got Babe Ruth stuff scattered throughout this house that would put the Baseball Hall of Fame to shame. Did this require a kind of a special relationship with the Ruth family?
Well, when I was 17 years old, I visited with Mrs. Ruth, and at that time in my collecting career, I used to make wooden ashtrays and present them to the different great athletes or their relatives, and chatted with Mrs. Ruth for about 2 hours and told her about my project, how I started collecting, and she then presented me Ruth's last uniform along with a bat that he used and a medal that he had won.
And Jim Thorpe back here is another special friend of yours, I would gather, from all the things we see.
Well, I visited with Mrs. Thorpe on 3 different occasions over a 5-year period. She had lived in Cabazon, California, and she had showed me many of Jim Thorpe's items. And again, I had told her about our concept for developing an international sports immortals museum, and she was enthralled with the idea. And one day, 5 years later, after my original visit with her, I received a telegram out of nowhere that said, "Am confined to bid, come and get all of Jim's things. I want them displayed in the Sports Immortals Museum." And I picked up all of Jim's scrapbooks of his whole career, his Olympic scrapbook, his Indian clothes, his football gear, just a tremendous collection in its own right.
Are you having trouble with anybody? Do you ever run into a problem that there's a special person out there that just says, "Nope, I'm not giving you nothing"?
Well, not as of lately, because the museum project has become so well publicized that people are most cooperative. Again, this is going to be a museum that perpetuates the memories of these greats, and the relatives realize, you know, that where is a better place than an international sports shrine to have their treasures displayed. We are hoping to acquire a Yankee uniform from Babe Ruth and a Detroit uniform from Ty Cobb. But we have numerous items, including 2 uniforms of Ruth when he played with the Braves and an Old Timers uniform. We would like to have his wax figure displayed in a Yankee uniform.
Now this looks like an ordinary trophy until I look real close, and I see Jesse Owens' name on it.
Well, again, the museum collection contains literally thousands of trophies from all the greats, Jack Dempsey to Jim Thorpe to Bill Tilden, on and on. But this particular trophy was given to me by Jesse Owens, who I visited with in Chicago with his lovely wife. And at that time, they presented me this beautiful trophy that Jesse was given when he was named track athlete in the first part of the 20th century. Also, they had given me this book from the 1936 Olympic Games that Jesse was handed as he was touring years later Germany with all the autographs of all the Olympic champions of 1936, along with all the photos of Germany prior to the war.
Well, I can't wait to go downstairs and see more of this. In fact, I may never be seen again.
Come on, Jim.
The Platt basement is a veritable maze of memorabilia. Cut into a Pittsburgh hillside, it might stretch a full city block. It embodies totally the kid in a candy store feeling. There's great stuff everywhere you turn. Even the garage is covered with boxing photos and posters and ticket stubs. The laundry room is covered with jerseys from some of hockey's all-time greats. And the family dog, Rocky, lords over a stairway of stars. In one room and out another. It would take days, maybe months, to tell the story of what's all here. Remember Don Larson, who made baseball history by tossing a perfect game in the 1956 World Series? Well, what do you think happened to one of the baseballs that Larson pitched that day? You've got it. Joel's got it. Along with thousands of baseballs in a room all their own.
This is a baseball room with over 6,000 autographed baseballs dating back to 1865. Some of the unique balls represented in the museum is the ball used in a double no-hit game, the only double no-hitter ever pitched in the major leagues, 1917 Chicago versus Cincinnati. Fred Toney was a winning pitcher, and I secured this baseball from his family. Another baseball represented in the museum in the baseball room is double no-hit balls from Johnny Vandermeer, a ball from the first night game, ball from Don Larson's perfect game in the World Series, and autographed baseballs from different World Series games.
Every aisle of the basement is truly a memory lane. Bubblegum cards, old catchers' masks and gloves, photographs, all sorts of artifacts, like that number 76 jersey worn by the great Marion Motley. And a little bit further down, Jim Brown's famed number 44 from Syracuse. Oh, to see those gridiron greats one more time. When Joel Platt's dreams come true and his museum becomes a reality, he hopes to add film so that his jerseys like Brown's 44 and Marion Motley's 76 do come to life. Remember we showed you the garage full of boxing stuff? Well, that doesn't even touch the surface of Platt's collection of ringside history. He's got a whole room in the basement devoted to the sweet science. Well, I'm a boxing fan, and I recognize those famous purple trunks of Joe Louis.
Yes, Jim, there's over 100,000 boxing items in the Sports Immortals Museum collection related to boxing. Trunks from Sugar Ray Robinson to Alexis Arguello to Jim Jeffries to Muhammad Ali to every great boxing champion. There's gloves back to Sullivan, Corbett, Fitzsimmons, Johnson, Jeffries, Marciano, Lewis. Again, every champion is represented here. There's literally 100,000 autographed photos, over 10,000 boxing programs from every championship fight. There's everything from Bob Fitzsimmons' individual horseshoes that he used to stamp with his name. Just about everything you can name in boxing.
While we're on the subject of boxing, one gets the impression that if Joel Platt has a favorite immortal, it might be Muhammad Ali. Certainly the two have enjoyed a special relationship down through the years.
You know, the hundreds and thousands of great athletes I have met in my travels, probably the one that stands out the most is Muhammad Ali. He was just such a unique individual, and I like to call him my favorite. I visited with Ali on 3 different occasions, but to make a long story short, on my second visit, he was training for the Larry Holmes fight at his Deer Lakes, PA training center in the mountains, and I was visiting with him. At the time, we were in the process of making up a wax figure of Muhammad Ali for the museum. And I told the champ at that time, I said, "Champ, we have your trunks, we need your gloves, we need your robe, and we need your shoes for this wax figure." So he sent his PR man up to get the robe, the gloves, and the shoes. And when the PR man returned, he only had the gloves and the shoes to give us. And Ali then proceeded to say, "Well, where's the robe?" And the PR man said, "Well, you only have one robe, champ, to train with." He says, "The man only asked for one robe. Get the robe."
Like the Canadian Mountie who always gets his man, Joel got the robe, as well as a very impressive contribution from none other than Ronald Reagan, a football helmet of all things. But it was the same helmet that Reagan wore as an actor back in the 30s while starring as the Gipper in that old film classic, The Newt Rockne Story. It is here, too, that we're reminded that our presidents and our sports have always been an intertwined part of our history.
This is presidential items related to sports. Army-Navy programs autographed by Herbert Hoover and Harry Truman. Horseshoes that LBJ sent me with autographed pictures of Jack Dempsey. Kennedy sent me a PT boat with autographed picture. Eisenhower sent me monogrammed golf balls. President Ford sent this football, autographed. Ronald Reagan, autographed baseballs from Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon. Most of the presidents are represented with some type of sports item.
One of my all-time favorite athletes was Wilt Chamberlain, and I couldn't resist prowling through the memorabilia for something to remind me of the Dipper. Would you believe I found Wilt's old number 5 jersey from his days at Overbrook High? I mean, where does one turn next? Right behind me for openers, where I found a pair of shoes, roughly the size of 2 efficiency apartments, once the property of NBA star Bob Lanier. His size, 22 feet, were, well, worthy of immortality. Notice the orderliness and economy of space here. There isn't a square inch of wasted area, and a second tour of the same room you were in earlier reveals a fresh batch of surprises. Now you've got uniforms in almost every room, some of them framed, some of them not. This is 1955 Bill Dickey.
Right, Jim, we have over 2,500 uniforms from all the great sports immortals. Some will be used on animated wax figures in the museum, and others will be on display. But all the way from Jim Thorpe to Babe Ruth to Hornsby, every great, O.J. Simpson, they're all represented. This is a pin collection with over 10,000 pins all the way back to the turn of the century of all the sports greats. baseball, football, and all the major sports. All these volumes are filled with rare pins, baseball silks, again dating back to the turn of the century, representing all the sports greats.
Well, this is the envy of all baseball card collectors. It's the Honus Wagner card, which is now valued at about $25,000. That's right, $25,000 for one card. Here's 1 million baseball cards. Now look, if this is worth $25,000, what is the value of this entire collection?
Well, the entire collection has been valued by the Smithsonian between $10 and $12 million. It's the largest collection on all sports in the world.
But we could almost make up a number, couldn't we? It's almost what anybody would pay for something like this.
That's it. These are irreplaceable collectibles, all related to sports greats.
Fortunately for Joel and the Platt family budget, his passion began long before the current boom in sports memorabilia collecting.
There's definitely been an evolution in sports collectibles. And again, in my million miles of travels and 100,000 athletes and relatives I've met along the way, most of the items, I'd say 95%, have been given to me for eventual display in the Sports Immortals Museum.
For reasons having to do with security and space, very few people have been able to witness Joel Platt's fabulous collection. We thank him for the opportunity on this edition of Sports Scrapbook, and we wish him well in his endeavor to establish his Sports Immortals Museum, which he says could become a reality within another couple of years. Based on what we've seen here, who is to doubt him? And now, how about one more tour down this truly unique memory lane?